go. Oh, what would you like to start with?
Okay, well, the first thing is you can see that I didn't master any software. I did this, I got so frustrated that I just did it with Post-it notes and took a picture of it because all right, so it was important to just get something down and not have the tool hang me up. So I know I can make it look better, but we had a call maybe a month ago, and I think one of the things I said was I might have bought the wrong course, that it might be that I should have gotten the start the conversation one instead of the complex sale one, because I am having a lot of challenges with the know, like, trust sequence.
Yeah.
And I'm following the template that was laid out for me by Kevin, and it's great to have somebody who's been doing this for 7 years. But here's the thing: everybody knows him because they hear him every week on his podcast. And I've been on the podcast maybe 3 times with 3 or 4 encores. So they don't know me. So these are very cold.
Okay.
These are freezing cold leads, in fact. And so that's where I'm feeling stuck. And also it's frankly, demoralizing and depressing when you can't get any traction. So then that just goes into a spiral. So then you don't want to do it as much, and you know where that leads.
Okay. Well, that is the course. If you're not having any inbound leads or have existing customers or are you having a hard time getting the conversation started. Do you have interest in taking that course or?
Well, so I'm very new to this. And so it might be that I just don't understand what the pace is, and that pace at which things are happening is actually sort of normal for a cold, a relatively cold lead. So It's kind of hard to know if it's because I'm not doing the right things, or if it's because that's just kind of how long it takes for the stuff that we're selling. So that's why I sort of wanted to walk through, what I'm doing, and see if there's something obvious that I'm missing. I don't think it's because I'm moving too fast, but I guess I might be wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm also a little bit confused about what constitutes an ask, because there are people for whom, if I start, I attached a question list as well.
Yeah.
If I start asking some of those questions, they might think that's an ask. When does something become an ask? I'm trying to think through that.
Yeah. Let's start there. An ask is when it's about you versus about them. You can ask somebody, can I get you a cup of coffee? Is that about you or them? That's about them, right?
Right.
Yeah. But if you say to somebody like, boy, it sure would be nice to have a cup of coffee, wouldn't it? That's probably about you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you go through the questions course?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Because we can cover that, which is relevant to that course, and that might help you. If you want to look at the other course, if it would teach you how to get these conversations started without feeling pushy or cold calling or any of that stuff.
Yeah. So I need to, I need to think about whether or not I want to do that.
Yeah. So you want to go through these in order, or did you have a particular concern?
Well, so one thing I wanted to do was if there was any way to map some of these questions back to the process that I've been using.
Okay.
And I'm sort of thinking that there are that I wouldn't be asking some of those questions until I get to a certain place, in the process.
Right.
So
Yeah, so those questions really aren't for so much super cold outreach. It assumes that they know who you are and they're conversing with you, as opposed to a complete stranger on the phone.
Right. I think you have to be at the trust stage to get a good answer to a lot of those questions.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, so it's like you and I are talking right now. Okay. If I didn't know who you are and you didn't know who I was and I was calling you, you have to build up to those questions.
Right. So I'm missing some steps. I'm missing some questions.
Well, there's two courses. So what you're trying to solve the problem of start the conversation, get the meeting with the other course, and that's why.
Okay, blame it on Kevin. He told me to take this course. I asked him which one, and he told me to take this one. So that's what I did.
Yeah, I understand, but
right.
Yeah. So I don't want to try and teach you that course on a one-on-one.
I understand. No, yeah. I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
So basically, when you get somebody, let's say it's somebody who does know, like, and trust you already.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But they're not interested in your service, or they don't know about your service yet. So you would start with like a curiosity question.
Right.
Like, knowing what you do, I would say something like, have you ever run into a black box with not knowing where your contract is? Or what's preventing it, why you don't have it already? Or what you want to use is fear-based things, because people do more to solve a problem than they will to prevent a problem.
Right.
So getting them focused on, the black box of government contracting. And have you ever thought what it'd be like if you understood exactly where it was and you could prevent the problems or getting it stuck? Asking them what their plans are to expand in the government market. That's kind of a conversational question. I don't know. It's probably a reasonable warm-up question.
One thing that I'm not quite sure how to formulate this question, but I know one thing that drives people crazy is when the government just goes silent.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know that our services can really help with that, because we can't necessarily, dig into a government office and find out, where the source selection is right now. But I know that's one thing that people would love an answer to.
Well, I mean, the answer, you probably can articulate that, they don't move at a very fast pace, which they may already know, that they're given a certain amount of time to do it. And if they do it faster than that, that amount of time will get reduced. So that's why they don't move very fast. And it's not necessarily a red flag, but it can be. Meaning it would be nice to run by what you're doing with the contracting officer before you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a test drive.
Yeah, well, it's like going through a legal process or a tax process, having somebody who knows how it works guiding you versus you hunting and pecking and hoping you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But it's a good pain point, because that black box, that quiet zone, that mystery middle, that bugs people. And especially when they wait a month and then they come back with some nit thing that's missing, and you start the process over again, and you still don't get any answers or any deadlines or.
Right. I think the other thing that that people have a lot of frustration with that we can help with is getting how to get access, how to get FaceTime with the government. I'm thinking of your "things have changed"
Yes.
phrase. When you sold to the government, I've sold to the government. Back when I sold to the government, we were friends. I mean, I had personal friends who were in the government, like people I would go out to dinner with and stuff like that. Now, you can't even talk to anybody. It is craziness. Every single person in the government is convinced that if they talk to a contractor, they're going to go to jail.
Yeah.
And so I think that our services can, again, we can't get on the phone and arrange FaceTime, but we can develop strategies to get around that.
Yeah. And that's it. You can, I think if you have some analogies, like imagine going to sell into a new country, wouldn't you hire somebody locally who understands how to get that all done? You know, the legal, the tax, the customs, all of that stuff. You can either learn by trial and error, or you can have somebody guide you through it. And, you know, if it goes wrong, you're the one that gets blamed.
Yeah.
And it's a prevention thing. So what you have to do is time travel them to the pain that they have by not using you.
Right.
And maybe list out those 3 to 5, prioritize them based off of what you think will be most effective, and then put in front of it, we solve the problem of, or people come to us when.
And so your sense is that the fear is going to be a bigger motivator than somebody who is doing okay but wants to double their revenue. They're not afraid; they just want more of what they're doing.
Depending on who you're talking to, like a sales VP may be turned on by that. You know, doubling their federal revenue or their public sector revenue. If you're talking to somebody on the contract side, the legal side, they could care less about revenue. All they care about is their political standing and their quality of life.
Right.
Yeah. And
of course, this is where the complex sale comes in, because even though these aren't really big sales, I think it's pretty rare that the first person we talk to buys. I think they have to go to the owner of the company, or, you know, a lot of these are small companies. They go to the president or the owner or somebody. Yes. So, it is definitely a complex sale.
It is. Yeah. You got multiple people. The dollar amount is beyond an individual's credit card or expense report. So they have to go through the internal process. It's multiple calls, multiple decisions. You have to keep momentum. You know, it's not, an urgency sale. It's a need sale.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I need it sounds as though I should have another set of questions that will work before I get to these.
Yeah, these
are more discovery.
They're discovery, they're conversational. Because you're working at the point where you have trust and rapport. Now you've got to get curiosity. And you can either dredge up a past experience that they had or anticipate a future one.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, let's take a VP of sales that they're worried about their forecast. And, you know, you can say, like, has this ever happened to you? It's the last week of the quarter. The deal's been in procurement for a month. You've expected it any day. And all of a sudden they come back with some other requirement or piece of paperwork or sole source justification or some other thing you've never heard of. Have you ever thought of preventing that? And then they might say, well, how can you possibly prevent it? Well, imagine being able to have a contracting officer or former contracting officer at your beck and call, so that before you submit your paperwork, or you just want coaching on the deal to prevent that from getting stuck, and having realistic expectations on the timing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah. And believe me, they want that. But
yeah, and I have a story from a proposal that I worked on several years ago for almost a year. It was in source selection for very close to 2 years, and then it was canceled.
Yeah.
Okay, seriously. And I have a feeling that a smart contracting officer would have looked at that opportunity when the draft came out and said, there's no urgency on the government side. They don't really need this. It's redundant with 10 other vehicles. It's a horribly written RFP, and it'll probably implode. Don't waste your money bidding this thing. I didn't see that, but I'm not a former contracting officer. But I have a feeling somebody with some smarts would have seen it and said, don't go there. Bid on something else.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a very fear-based market, a market that very few people in the world understand. And they might be overconfident. They might be like, oh,
yeah.
my sales rep is a former major in the Army. And it's like, that's helpful. That'll get you some connections. But, how familiar are they with every agency's? And things have changed. The rules have changed since he's probably been out.
Yeah, that tends to not work all that well anyway, when you try to get a former government person to do stuff for you.
Yeah, but everyone expects, people are checkbox people. They're like, oh, I've got somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So can we go back to my my map to money for a minute?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm not getting zero traction. I am getting some traction with a few people, and so we're at the place where I'm sending some content, and they email me back, it's mostly on LinkedIn. They get back to me on LinkedIn and say, this is really good, and I'd really like to get more of it, and we think you guys do great stuff. And so at that point, I'm not entirely sure where to take the conversation. One possibility is to have them do a podcast feedback session, which has historically worked really well. The issue with that is that also is a bottleneck, because that has traditionally been a Kevin thing. And so then I'm stuck with this. He's already super busy, so I'm kind of stuck. It goes into his inbox, and I don't have control over it at that point. I think he would be open to me doing a feedback session. I'm kind of not sure. I've got a couple of relationships that are at that place where I've sent them stuff. They said, yes, we like all this, and I'm not kind of sure what to do next.
Yeah, I think a feedback, like what you could do is you be the prep person for the feedback session, where either for them to be on the podcast, or you're looking for great topics that people like them would care about. Could we do a 5-minute discussion on that?
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah. That way you get into the curiosity and the interest type questions, like what's most important to you? Have you run into these black box issues, deal slipping, orders either canceled or reduced? See what kind of level of pain you can develop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that would be good.
Yeah. And if they say no,
some of them would not necessarily be good podcast guests. But Kevin said, "Don't worry about that. We can record it, and then we don't necessarily have to play it if it's not good."
Yeah.
And he's going to have me on another podcast. We're going to record on Friday, so that hopefully there'll be, a little bit more recognition. It won't be these things won't be as cold.
Good.
So then clearly the right-hand column is very thin. I think this was a comment when you went through Kevin's map with somebody else. You said, where it's really thin, you can tell. You can tell the person doesn't know what they're going to do. Yeah, okay, that is so true. Yeah. But that's also because I haven't been through it, and I've listened to the sales calls that Kevin has recorded, but he's going to do it his way, and he started from a different place. And when he sort of sets the stage, this is how we got here. It's going to be different. My evolution is going to be different.
Yeah, I mean, that's why. Like in the questions course, you go through different stages. You get them curious about the problem you solve. Then you try and build interest in the problem you solve. And then you try and develop a commitment to a next step in the problem that you solve.
Right.
And if you go through those stages, it'll become more natural and you can prepare for it.
Right. I think that I did that course pretty quickly, and it was a while ago. So I think now, having done this exercise, it might be good for me to go back and review that.
Yes.
And there were not a lot of office hours connected to that. Is that correct?
There's no office hours connected to it, but there's one-on-ones.
Oh, there's no office hours. The one-on-ones. Okay. Yeah. And I think there's 3 or 4 of them. I'm pretty sure I listened to everything.
Yeah. I just put up a new one, I think this week.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I would do there is, just develop your questions around each stage.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've got templates in there and, try out the template ones and see which ones you think will connect most with your audience.
Okay. And we talk about this all the time within the organization, but the question of how long you keep pursuing someone who is just completely non-responsive.
Yeah.
And I know you've talked about that in this context. So like we have one person that they do one huge proposal like every 8 years or something like that. And so I think they're about 2 years away from their recompete. So we might not hear from them for a while, but like when we hear from them, it could be huge. And so I sort of feel like someone like that, it's worth staying in touch with, because when they need something, it's really going to be big, even if they're not responsive in the near term. Then there's other people who just don't get back to you, and I have no idea if it's because they're in between or because they're just fundamentally not interested. And is there any kind of rule of thumb of like how often you send a compliment, send it this, send it that, and you don't hear anything? You just let it go?
It depends on how important it is to you. I think as long as you're adding value and not asking for something, maybe sending them a question or some content or a link to a podcast you thought they'd be interested in, as long as you're friendly, and I have a cadence, like my business, I do it quarterly. So I know what they care about Q1. I know what they care about Q3.
Aha. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of different from the audience that we're dealing with.
Well, for yours, I mean, you certainly have the year end, and there's the build up to that. You have, budget issues. You have current events in the government. You have new stuff that's coming out, news, things like that you can always use. I think if you develop your own cadence that you think would apply, because like with your commercial, like the big companies that sell to the government, do it quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
The first week of the next quarter, they're going to feel or remember the pain they went through.
Right.
Yeah. Where the last week of the quarter, you don't want to go near them because their head's down.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I don't want to be seen as just a pest, if somebody is just completely not interested.
Yeah. I mean, because think of it yourself. I mean, as long as somebody's not asking or pushing you, you don't care.
Okay.
If you're sharing something of value, you maybe even going as far as asking a question, you're looking for input from experts like them about this for your podcast. Yeah, little things.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. I like that.
And
some of it, some of it, there's natural hooks. There's a couple where it was very easy. There was a hook and I could hang something on it.
Yeah.
It's the ones that are, not very visible on LinkedIn and not very responsive. Then I just didn't want to be somebody who was cluttering up their mailbox. I mean, I do try to put something in that has value every time.
Right. And I wouldn't do it every week.
Yeah.
I think that's what annoys people is like,
okay,
when you're hounding, hey, you didn't get back to me. Well, why would I get back to you? It's like,
right. Good point.
Yeah. Don't yell at them. Don't beg for them. Don't ask for anything. I think you're fine.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That is hugely helpful because the housekeeping connected. I think I've maybe now got 20 or 25 leads, and so the housekeeping connected with that can be overwhelming. And this is if the business model in our organization is there's only one full-time employee and all the rest of us have another gig. So I actually have billable work that I do.
Yeah.
And so the getting the contact part of this to a place where it's efficient and not a time vampire is hugely important.
Yeah. And I don't know if Kevin has a marketing automation system, but you
sort of.
Yeah, you can put it into a cadence. That would be very easy. That would be, value add, but, monthly or quarterly.
Yeah, so it'd be like, I think I could use the MailChimp.
Yeah.
I think I could set up a distribution in MailChimp and then I generate the message and it just happens.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That will, that assumes that I'm not doing it through LinkedIn anymore, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, I would have, and that is a goal. I didn't put, that is something that's missing, I think, from my flow here. I didn't put that in. But I think that might be a good thing to add, to get off of LinkedIn and transfer over to email or ideally phone.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I will think about the other course, and I'm going to